Hot on the heels of an unremarkable episode that was just alright, aka episode 84, we get another one that is also an unspectacular experience from start to finish, aka this one, episode 85. Though I strongly believe that this one is even worse. It's even more uneventful and unexciting. Episode 84 at least had a hilarious and charming new character, several funny moments, and some action, even if it wasn't anything special that allowed the second Pokemon to get some more screen time. Moreover, it revealed several key details about what happened 100 years ago, meaning that it still added to the story. Moreover, it allowed the heroes to shine in fitting ways by having them lend a hand to Liko and friends as they endured the perilous journey to Laqua. The heroes fulfilled their calling, which is great, and the way they did so served as a great callback to the games, providing both a nostalgic throwback to the classic games and a remembrance of the modern ones and how far we've come. It was far from a perfect episode, but it at least had some value and we got at least some enjoyment out of it. Episode 85, on the other hand, features a whole lot of nothing. No action, no major revelations, no chances for anyone to shine or stand out, and next to no value to the story. The only valuable thing it brought to the table is that Pagogo assumed its Terrasto form in order to break the barrier it used 100 years ago to seal the Lacuium and Lucius at the heart of Laqua. Following this, Freed decides to venture in first to make sure that there is no danger, only to find that there is danger when he runs into Spinel. And he's not the only one who encounters a familiar foe. This turn of events sets up the massive confrontation in the next episode, of course. This is about the only meaning this episode has in the grand scheme of things. It serves as build-up for the next few episodes, which will very likely make up for the lackluster showing that was this episode and the previous one. They are the calm before and the lead up to the storm. Which is perfectly fine. Like I've said many times before, not every episode needs to be a bombastic maelstrom of action or a jaw-dropping series of intense narrative twists and turns. But for the ones that aren't, at the very least give us a few things to enjoy in them. Episode 85 was so light on content, in fact, that they even had the time for an extended series of flashbacks when Liko and friends realized that their journey, their adventure is almost over, and so they reminisce about everything they've done and been through to get to this point. You already know how I feel about filler and recaps. I understand that when the end draws near, it's fitting, narratively appropriate, and honestly cliché to look back and reflect upon the voyage that paved the way to this point. But this doesn't mean that I'm okay with every time this happens. Certainly not when everything that preceded the recollection is so lackluster. I do have to say though that Liko and friends recalling key moments from their adventure thus far was not a total waste of time because it did lead to one important question, something that I was worried about and did consider a possibility. Once they get to the end of the line, meaning once the explorers are stopped and the world is safe, will Pagogo choose to stay with Lucius and or in Laqua? Which would of course mean that Liko must release it and part ways with it. In the first part of my review of episode 75, I did say that I could see this happening, because that's one way to allow something as monumental as having a main character in this anime catch a legendary Pokemon come to pass. They get to catch it, yeah, but they don't get to keep it for long. And this applies to other very powerful Pokemon. Just remember Ash and how they took away from him several such Pokemon, or Pokemon that could eventually become such Pokemon. In some cases, not even letting him officially catch them. I'm of course talking about Larvitar, Goodra, Naganadel, Greninja, and Solgaleo. Like, yeah, allowing Liko to catch a legendary Pokemon is insane, especially when you consider that Ash never got to do the same officially, despite being the protagonist for well over 1,000 episodes. However, if the plan all along was to eventually have her release it, then it makes sense. Now, I am of course not condoning or advocating for this. I'm just stating a fact. Certain kinds of Pokemon are simply off limits to main characters in this anime. If they do get to have them, there's usually a catch, which is almost always that their partnership is only temporary. Even Go, who was gifted the chance to break this curse, if you will, 3 times, was not immune to this. He still had to give one legendary, aka Eternatus, away, and he didn't have free ready access to another, aka Suicune. Thankfully though, Roy does say that he feels that Pagogo will choose to stay with Liko in the end, reassuring her and making her admit that he's probably right. So there's hope. The only other things I can praise about this episode are first, Rayquaza, and the second, the setting, which is to say, of course, Laqua. I just love how after parting the clouds to reveal the paradise they concealed, which was very cool by the way, Rayquaza proceeded to basically take a nap, exhausted due to everything it did to help Liko and the company get here. It even demanded to be withdrawn into its Pokeball so that it could rest properly. Seeing such a powerful, fearsome, and imposing legendary Pokemon cuddle up like a puppy is simply so cute. Something Dot mentions. This goes to show that no matter the size, status, power level, or appearance of a Pokemon, they are all still very much capable of being gentle, adorable, pet-like, and endearing creatures that you cannot help but love and want to care for. I must say, however, that I don't like that Roy is the one who withdraws it, since this feels like even more evidence that Roy truly believes that he owns Rayquaza now, and that this series, or rather the writers, fully intended to allow this to be the case. Which, as you probably know, is something I don't agree with. As for Laqua, I wasn't impressed by it when we first got to see it back in episode 75. It just didn't look like anything special, nor was there anything unique or exceptional about it, other than the fact that legendary Pokemon live here peacefully and normally alongside other Pokemon. Well, this episode managed to make Laqua look and feel a lot more remarkable, a lot more like a paradise spoken about in fairy tales. First, in the visual department, you have its exact location, which was a mystery before, but now it's clear that it lies inside a massive crater atop a massive mountain that touches the clouds. Not only is this an impressive location both in terms of scale and magnificence, but it also adds a layer of mysticism that fits a place like this perfectly. After all, the clouds and the natural wall that surrounds it, especially at this height, ensure that this is a place that is not only well hidden, but also well isolated from civilization, allowing it to thrive without intervention from the outside world. It's almost impossible to see such a spectacular sight and not be left in awe. It's truly breathtaking. This is how you design a setting that is just beautiful and astonishing to behold, and one that draws you in, making you want to see and learn more about it. Finally, in the field department, they were able to make Laqua come across as a far more interesting, unique, and special place by making the Pokemon that call it home be Pokemon you wouldn't normally encounter in the wild, and by having those that are more common in the wild behave unusually. The former is sold best by the legendary Pokemon, which again, we already knew about, and it's unfortunate that we don't get to see more of them. And the two we do see are not exactly unique for Laqua. We saw the legendary birds and the Terrakion in episode 75. Here in episode 85, we see just Zapdos and the Virizion, who is another member of the Swords of Justice. Some more variety would have been nice, and it would have elevated the magnificence of this place. Thankfully though, they were able to reinforce the notion that Laqua is home to Pokemon that are rare to see in the wild by featuring a ton of fully evolved starter Pokemon. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but we've never had the chance to encounter fully evolved starters in the wild in the games, right? Fully unevolved starters, yes. The Indigo Disc being a great example. Second stage starters also, yes. Though as far as I remember, only once in the Friend Safari from X and Y. Point is that finding starters in the wild is every trainer's dream. Like, I lost it when I realized all of them were catchable in the Indigo Disc. I was very excited due to this, and it was one of my favorite aspects of that expansion. If we got to find fully evolved ones in the wild, I'm sure we would all lose our minds. So this alone instantly turns Laqua into paradise without a doubt. Eevee and the Eeveelutions also deserve a mention here, since it's cool and unusual to see them running around in the wild. It would have been even cooler though if we got to see all Eeveelutions here. As for the latter, it is made abundantly clear that the Pokemon here do not behave normally when we see three things. First, that a Primeape and a Hydreigon, two Pokemon that are notorious for being aggressive and having a short temper, walk past each other peacefully without stirring up trouble. They don't even look at each other. They are just going about their day normally, minding their own business. If these two are so docile, I can only imagine that other Pokemon with a similar nature are also quite tranquil, and the Pokemon that are normally nice and friendly are even friendlier and nicer here in Laqua. Second, speaking of amicable and agreeable Pokemon, the Pokemon here are very welcoming, kind, and friendly, even to strangers, and more surprisingly to humans. Now of course, these are Pokemon that are like this by nature, to the point that it wouldn't be strange to see others of their species acting like this outside of Laqua. But still, I think that normally wild Pokemon are for the most part a lot more wary of those they don't know, especially humans. Clearly not the case with these adorable little fellas here, which is cute and unusual. I think it's safe to say that Laqua is extremely peaceful. There's likely never any conflict here. The fact that they rarely get any visitors is likely largely to blame for this. You simply don't have belligerent, angry, or bad individuals coming in to disturb the peace. Moreover, any Pokemon born in such an environment is bound to adopt and grow with a kind and peaceful disposition, ensuring that such a unique ecosystem is continuously fostered and maintained. Truly fascinating. Finally, we also see that even natural enemies like Heatmor and Durant get along perfectly fine here in Laqua. I imagine that there must also be Seviper and Sangoose hanging around each other, chilling together like it's normal. This has to be the most peaceful place in the world of Pokemon. Of this I have no doubts. So yeah, overall this episode was fine, I guess. Basically nothing happened in it. Certainly nothing exciting or worthwhile. Save for the last couple of minutes, of course, which were obviously important to the story. The path to the site of the incident that started it all 100 years ago is finally open, and the explorers have made their move, stopping Liko and company in their tracks. This beautifully sets up the next few episodes, which are sure to be filled with non-stop action and excitement. We even got a tease of the fact that there are Zygarde cells in the area, which will play a key role in the episodes to come. Though of course, we knew this already. By ending on such a strong cliffhanger, this episode ensures that we are hyped for and eagerly looking forward to the next episode. Unfortunately though, such key moments and brilliant build-up to the future cannot make up for what was otherwise an extremely lackluster episode that was lacking in almost every department. It was so devoid of, well, anything in fact, that they even had the time for a bunch of recaps no one needed or wanted. Making Laqua feel and look more unique and fascinating certainly saved this episode from being an almost complete waste of time, especially when combined with the last few minutes of it, which again were great. Still, getting fished out of a fire doesn't mean you can avoid getting burned. While this episode avoided being completely pointless and bad, it didn't do so by much, meaning that it still ended up being far from great. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, feel free to click the links on screen. And if you'd like to support the channel and help me keep making content like this, you can find ways to do so in the description below. Your support truly means the world to me. Thank you so much for watching, and let's meet again in the next video.